I think. All right, we're on the air. Woo! Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine, and we've got Derek. We only have three strong. Brian was in earlier, but he might be having computer problems. We have Philip, we have Rick, and it appears that that Brittany is not feeling well today. She's under the weather, and you got to look out.
Caught a little Steven.
Yeah. She's got Steven fever. All right. And I don't know who all's in the chat room. I should go and check that too, because people will say, he's ignoring me. He's ignoring me in the chat room. So, and Roxanne is obviously in the chat room, but not on the panel. So, Jake Miller, my steady Eddie, how's it going, Jake? And Steven is in there and just not yet, And Stephen Rose says, Brittany sucks. Well, you best hope so, because you're going to be there later tonight. Look, I mean, hey, Cindy. Hello, Cindy. Cindy's back. So there you go. So Stephen, does Cindy suck too? I mean, while we're, these women are your fans. You can't treat them abusively like that. That would make you like Donald Trump. That's not good at all.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What'd you say?
No, I didn't say anything. So here's my what we're going to be talking about today. First, I want to start with a little bit of breaking news, even though it's really not breaking, because if you're living in a cave, you know that the Browns have signed left tackle Greg Robinson for 1 year to prove that he can do the job. This is very interesting to me. We all know his story. He was the number 2 overall out of Auburn in 2014 and really shat himself, as Bronk would say. This is a 1-year prove-it deal, and it really shows that the Browns are not completely sold on Greg Robinson and that they are going to be looking at other options as well. Desmond Harrison will be back. I'm not sure that's any better, but I would not be surprised if the Browns were to go into free agency and grab themselves a little offensive line help. I think that the 1-year deal is a red flag. I don't know what the red flag is with Greg Robinson. Maybe he's not in the best shape that he could be in from the offseason. Maybe there are some issues as far as his focus. Hard to say. But I think that, there's Jawan Taylor, there's Greg Little, there's Andre Dillard. Those are the draft names that come to mind, but I can't imagine them using the high pick on an offensive tackle, a left tackle. That would be a surprise to me and a surprise to many others. There are lots of Browns who feel that Robinson can be the guy. Joe Thomas, very high on him. And the same thing with Sean O'Hara, former center, very high on him. But there's obviously somebody in the organization who sees something that isn't real thrilled. So the 1-year deal is, if he ends up going south in this 1-year deal, his career is really going to be shot ski. And that's what it tells me, is that they're looking for some kind of commitment from him from a work ethic perspective, and maybe they just don't feel that he can be relied upon at this point. But we all know J.R. Smith could have 1 good year, right? As long as we understand that this would not be the first time in history if Robinson came out and did really well for for the better part of half a year, and then he falls back into oblivion. It wouldn't be the first time this happened with athletes, some of whom are very inconsistent. So that's what the Browns have done as far as that's concerned. In another situation that I wanted to bring up right off the get-go is that the Ravens have released Michael Crabtree, who is a disappointment to them. 31 years old. He only caught 54 balls last year. And, this is an interesting thing for Browns fans. Since Lamar Jackson took over the quarterbacking position, Crabtree had only caught 13 passes for 135 yards. But believe me, nobody but the tight ends there were catching anything. If there was ever an opportunity for the Browns to move up in the world in the AFC North, boy, it looks like things are opening up like a big, huge, wide crater fucking chasm for the Browns, because the Ravens really have nothing coming back at wide receiver. John Brown is expected to leave in free agency. That leaves Willie Snead as the only returning wide receiver who made more than 20 catches last year. Now, so if you want to bring in 3 new wideouts with a guy who at quarterback who doesn't have yet assembled all of his drop back skills, and who just rehired John Harbaugh, it's going to be more defense and less offense. You're not going to pick up 3 wideouts in a single off season, and not when they're playing with a quarterback who didn't show a penchant for throwing the ball down the field. So from Cleveland's perspective, this is a really good thing, because it looks like there's some rebuilding going on there. And the Steelers,
my pick for them to go 6-10 is looking pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a rebuild. And for Pittsburgh, they're not saying anything about rebuild. But you know something? When you look at the running backs that have walked away from the Steelers and the wideouts that have walked away from the Steelers, there are people who are beginning to question whether, you take somebody like Le'Veon Bell, who may be odd in his own way, but nobody in the Steelers organization, the people I spoke to, nobody questioned his work ethic. Nobody questioned his preparedness. And, you don't just toss guys away the way they're tossing guys away. And you wonder whose ear Ben Roethlisberger has. And, he's running out of time. I'm not saying the Steelers are where the Ravens are, but
I would. There.
Well, yeah, you can see that the clock is running down on the Ben Roethlisberger era. So I think that's, and now they're saying that Robert Kraft, on the day of the AFC Championship game, that at 11 a.m. on January the 20th, he arrived at the massage parlor in a chauffeured 2015 blue Bentley. Could you be any more conspicuous? Get this. He was videotaped receiving oral and manual sex from a woman at the spa in Jupiter, Florida. Hell, if they told me it happened on the planet Jupiter, I couldn't imagine that they could find a woman who would go down on Robert Kraft. Let's be honest about this, folks. Officials say
anything for money, right?
Well, hey, officials say he gave her a $100 bill and another bill before leaving at 11:15 a.m. Let me explain this to you in simple terms, all right? You don't get oral and manual sex at the same appointment at a massage parlor, because if you can climax, the oral usually does it all by itself. But if you're Bob Kraft and you already have a 39-year-old girlfriend who can't get you to Pleasure Town, then you have to go and find sex slaves from foreign countries. The first bill was the $100 bill for the oral, and it didn't get him there, and he had to pay up a second time trying to get jacked off. So, Jeez. I know this is really pretty. This is the kind of thing I love to talk about in reference to the Patriots and Bob Kraft.
I think Derek's mom would have done it for 50.
Oh no, no, and would have been equally unsuccessful. That's the thing. My goodness, and she would have had the right to say no. The poor, Hunsiya, or whatever the name of the woman was who had to do this, didn't have a say. The guy pulls up in a blue Bentley, and this is what, you know. Hooah! I have no idea. But he left at 11:15 a.m. He arrived at 11 and he left at 11:15. I don't quite understand that either. Usually it's like, from what I gather, it's like you pay for 30 minutes or an hour, right? I mean, I don't know of a 15-minute deal. You know,
he tells the driver to keep the motor running, or
yeah, I know. But you know you're in trouble when the prostitute says, "Hold still for the camera." you know, you got a big problem. Needless
the driver to park in the 15-minute parking zone or something.
7 hours later, there was Bob Kraft with his perfectly coiffed hair, watching his team win. You know, just 17 hours before that, on January 19th, he was also seen soliciting prostitutes on video surveillance. So he was going to the street, or as the doobies would say, he was taking it to the street. Holy shit. I mean, the man has absolutely no sense in his head. It's like cruising in the Bentley. Hey, do you think that you could give me some kind of a deadly virus? That would be really nice. Thank you. Gotta love that.
Can't wait for New Year's Eve. Watch his balls drop at Times Square.
Oh, man.
Oh, thank you. He scores.
All right, I'm going to have to log off. And
I could have
get
gone
back
to the
on
flight
here.
paper out, but
Wait.
I chose not to.
Why are you logging off, Derek?
Because I got to switch internet here.
Oh, okay. You'll be back, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. You know, hold on a sec here. Let me turn.
We'll be
I forgot to turn on this other light. You know, there shall be light. There we go. So now we can talk about, you know, and somebody made a really good recommendation, me being a dumb cow. I appreciate the two people who responded to the show in a constructive way, besides saying you suck, you're fat, or why don't you go suck somebody's dick. They said you should be time stamping the videos. Hi, Jim. How you doing?
Doing great, Moo. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Nice to have you on the panel. But time stamping the video is going to save people a hell of a lot more time to be able to get to the parts of the show that they want to watch. We all know one thing from all of the statistics I have is that nobody watches the whole hour show. I mean, A, it's just simply not that good. And B, there's only certain things people are interested in. Like, they're not interested in what it took to get Robert Kraft off, for example. All right. So here's where a timestamp will go, and we'll start talking about Jim Hammer eating in a noisy room. No, we're going to actually start. We're going to start talking about the NFL draft from a different perspective today. And we're going to talk about Andrew Berry being gone. For those people who are not aware and living in a cave, Andrew Berry is no more with the Cleveland Browns. He has taken a job with the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, and it is a promotion. And this guy was probably Jimmy Haslam's rising star. You know, being the vice president of player personnel since 2016, which for the Browns is a long time under Haslam. Nobody lasts 2 years or more with Jimmy Haslam. Yeah. Now he's going to be the vice president of football operations for the Eagles, where he's going to serve as a right-hand man to Howie Roseman. Now, the past with Andrew Berry is the only way the Browns would have let anyone to talk to him would have been if it were an absolute promotion. This is an absolute promotion. But the fact is, Andrew Berry was being groomed by Jimmy Haslam to be a general manager. And, of course, that is not going to come to pass with John Dorsey on board. So the expectation is that Debo Desta is going to stay, but that Berry, the Harvard graduate, is gone. With Dorsey having brought in talent evaluation, including Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith, The Browns simply had too many VPs of player personnel. And there's a third one, Ken Kovac, who joined the club back in 2014 as a director of football administration. So, I mean, so here you go. The question that I'm going to ask the panel is a fairly simple one. Andrew Berry gone, good, bad, or indifferent? We're going to start. Let's start with Rick on this.
Well, I didn't know that much about him, so probably indifferent because, you know, there were probably some people out there that didn't even know he was with us. And, you know what his claim to fame is or anything of that nature. But, you know, hopefully he's moved on to bigger and better things, and hopefully, you know, he does well wherever he winds up.
Andrew Berry was the kind of a player evaluation guy, while Sashi Brown was a finance guy. Okay, he was a cap guy. So that's kind of the way that broke down. Philip, good, bad, or indifferent?
I don't know if he's a good guy, bad guy, obviously, but I think it's good for both sides. And I vote D. Podesta gone too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know why he's there because we're not even doing this whole numerical metrics thing. But
Right.
But you know, I guess I think he's the one meddler that Haslam is retaining. Jim, Andrew Berry gone, good, bad, or indifferent?
Good for Andrew Berry. For the Browns, I guess it remains to be seen more than anything, just to find out what they end up doing. When you have somebody that you're really grooming for that GM's position, obviously so they thought something of him, but then again, it was Jimmy Haslam's thinking of how much, you know, what he thought about him. So, you know, if somebody else thought he was a good thing, good for them. Probably not good for the Browns in the long run, but I'm sure they can find someone to backfill that position or come up with that position. You know, I have faith. So,
All right, Derek, good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, frankly, I don't really care.
Okay, then hey,
just-
anything you don't care about, we don't talk about. Brian, you're next.
No, I wasn't done.
Yes, you're done when I tell you you're done. If you're not interested, then really, I mean, you haven't put much thought into this, and we want. And I know that Brian is sitting there eager to tell you what he thinks.
I was just gonna say we got Dorsey. We're fine. That's all I was gonna say.
Okay.
Well, it basically consolidates the authority of both Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith.
And
by him going.
To take that a step further, Brian, which I think is a good point, what it really does is it tells me that Jimmy Haslam has kind of stepped off the curb down onto the street level, away from where the decision making is happening, and that this is Dorsey's baby now. And the fact that the guy who was being groomed as a general manager was given the okay to to talk to other people and get a better job. The Browns are obviously satisfied with Dorsey, and let's be honest about it. The guy who was being groomed for your position is not necessarily the guy you want to have around if you're John Dorsey. So all in all, it just shows me a consolidation and authority within the organization, which is one of the best things that I've heard, because it's being consolidated away from Jimmy Haslam and his old group of people. So I consider that all good news. I don't, and that's not to take anything away from Andrew Berry, because I think that he is a responsible guy, and I think that the Eagles are getting a good man. I don't think it's bad for either side, is what it amounts to. But so to me, it's kind of an indifferent situation.
That Freddie Kitchens press conference was the first time I saw Jimmy look like a scalded dog. Like something's changed. And to me, it was all the power taken away.
Well, I think that there comes a point when you go 0-16. I mean, let's look at it this way. When you bring in Hugh Jackson and you make decisions that lead to an 0-6, 1-15, 0-16 back-to-back scenario, and you know where you stood in the draft, and if Jimmy didn't want Baker, we're going to use that as an example, you begin to start questioning your own knowledge and your ability. It doesn't mean that he is going to stop being a pest. It just means that, you know, what I've discovered about people like this, they will hire people who know more than they, but the second things go bad, they'll take the reins back themselves, even though they don't know shit. I used to see it with radio station owners all the time. You know, they'd hire me and I would bring the goddamn sales figures up. And once they felt more comfortable, they would just take the reins back themselves. I mean, it's like they'd run it right back into the shitter again. That's the problem here, is that nobody can be successful 100% of the time. And as anybody will tell you about any consultant, and I consider a general manager nothing more than a consultant, in the sense that he works for an owner of a company. He is expendable when the owner of the company feels that he can leave. And the more good decisions that he makes and the more good people that he brings in and gets good results, the more comfortable that the owner of the company will be in, you know, grabbing things back again for themselves. So you're really working toward being fired the day you're hired. And it's true for a general management position with any company in America, that you're only as good as the last thing you said and did. And once you get to that point, you're easily expendable, because if you've made good decisions and maybe then make one or two bad ones, then the owner has all the excuse in the world to cut payroll and to do it himself. And so it goes. That's the fear I have. All right. For for the Cleveland Browns, and as far as Jimmy Haslam is concerned. The NFL draft, all right, we've been talking about players, and I know that that Derek was really high on Greedy Williams. I wanted to point something out. Yeah, okay, well, I want to point out something here. This is from NFL.com, and granted, not
for the record, I like Murphy too from Washington.
Yeah,
I just like Greedy more.
Well, you know, what I'm seeing is a wide range of where players are going. NFL.com and Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 prospects, for this draft, has Greedy all the way down at 34 out of the top 50. All right.
That's crazy.
Well, you're going to say it's crazy. He has Byron Murphy at 30, and his highest.
What?
Yep. Then he has Rock Ya-Sin from from Temple, excuse me, at cornerback at 28. The highest rated cornerback is DeAndre Baker at 24. But I was explaining to you about Greedy.
That's funny.
Well, you know, I said something that he was in a position where he could. I've seen him anywhere in the first round, and I've seen him dropping to the second round. And I wanted to really find out what the deal is. What is it that the people who don't think as much about Greedy Williams as you do, what it is they're seeing in him that gives them pause? All right. Here's the good part, is that he is tall. He has really good speed that he accelerates into. He has good ball skills. You know, he's good in press coverage. He can mirror wideouts, which is great. Some of the rap on this guy is that in off coverage, not effective. He gets too high.
He's more of a man guy.
Yep, he gets too high and he lacks pop out of his plant and drive.
And that's the thing with the guy from Washington. He's more of a zone guy. So these are two different style of corners.
Right. But he had a really bad game against Jerry Jeudy, Alabama's wideout. He can locate and play the football well, but his overall lack of play strength can show up at time. And you know, here's what is making people unsure about this guy. Short area burst, which is, again, you know, when we talk about cars going 0 to 60, we know that there's no such thing as 0 to 60, because nobody stands going on to an interstate ramp sitting at 0 and having to accelerate to 60 miles an hour. It's kind of a benchmark, but it's not a realistic one. And what gets off the line first is one way of measuring a car's speed. And then the other one is how it gets from 40 to 60. All right. Those become real important numbers in the automotive world. In the football world, it's that short burst, how quickly you can get off the line. And then there's closing speed. All right. They're concerned about his short area burst and physicality. And when you have the ability to get beat off the line of scrimmage, that short burst, if it's lacking, will hurt you. You're going to fall a step behind very quickly, and this is a completely different level of football. To compare that, for example, to the other guy you brought up, Byron Murphy, he's not nearly as lanky and tall. He lines up outside. He's a big hitter. Yeah, he does take some reps in the slot. There's a lot of different ball technique, keeps his eye on the quarterback. He's quick to plant and drive on the ball. He has excellent instincts and ball skills. He's fluid and quick. There are concerns about his deep speed, which is the other measurement, all right? Against the run, he's aggressive as a force defender, but he tends to dive and miss on a number of tackles. He lacks ideal size / speed, but he's very instinctive and will be attractive to teams that play a lot of zone. But
to me, I think Byron Murphy's very compatible to Denzel Ward as far as comparison goes.
Wow, Denzel Ward, though, can play press. This guy's a zone coverage guy, and the Browns
that's what I mean.
With Wilkes as their defensive coordinator, they're going to blitz a lot. They're going to be caught in a lot of press situations. They need cornerbacks who can press cover. Next, we'll go up to DeAndre Baker, who was the highest of the bunch rated in this particular analysis of players at each position. This guy is kind of Hanford Dixon small, 5'11", 185 pounds. In press, he has quick hands that effectively can reroute wideouts. He's fluid when he turns and opens up and has enough speed to carry vertical routes. He's a little
very physical too.
Yes, he's a little sticky when he has to gear down and work downhill versus cornerbacks and curls. Against comebacks and curls.
Wide receivers.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of ball production, but he doesn't give up plays down the field. That's a lot like Hanford Dixon. Hanford was never the guy who got the pick. He just prevented wide receivers from getting the ball, period. He's productive, again, very productive against the run when he's unchecked, but he can get stuck on blocks because of a lack of size. Very competitive and plays in multiple schemes. So the other thing is that DeAndre Baker had 4 years in college, all right, which has a lot to do with this. Rock Ya-Sin, also from Temple, 4 years. But when you start looking at the other guys, Byron Murphy's only a sophomore, and your guy Greedy's only a sophomore. So that has something to do with that as well. But I find it interesting that there aren't, and I've seen Greedy in the top, going about 10 in the draft. But the bottom line is there are no coverage guys in this draft class who are locks to go in the top 10. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I'm just saying, for no disrespect, but for those guys, to me, to go as late as 32, 34, I think you mentioned, there would have to be a lot that happens, in my opinion. I think, there might have to be a couple of trades where teams move up and whatever. I just don't see that happening. I can't see these guys going out of the – maybe – I think one of these corners is going to drop out of the first. But I do think one of the two, Murphy or Greedy, will go first round for sure.
Yeah, The thing is, when you're sitting at 17, it's an awkward place because you're going to like somebody above you. And you have to decide whether you're going to lose more talent to trade up to get somebody that you like that much. But it isn't going to be a cornerback. I really don't believe that the Browns love any one of these cornerbacks so much more than anyone else. I find that hard to believe right now. Now, the combine,
I'd agree with that.
The combine can change all that, I think, with hype and all of that. But now, looking at the wide receiver position, I don't believe that the Cleveland Browns are going to use the 17 pick on a wide receiver either. But I've looked a little bit more deeply into this, and you've got Marquise Brown, the junior from Oklahoma. We know about the Lisfranc surgery that he just had.
And he played with Baker too. Keep that in mind. So that is not options.
But he's only 5'10" and 168. And this is he's a downfield receiver. They say that he's like Deshaun Jackson, similar build, and has those explosive playmaking skills. He can play slot.
And if I'm not mistaken, at Oklahoma, he was Baker's #1 target.
I mean, obviously, it did him well playing in that system and playing with Baker Mayfield. He's really fast on deep posts and go routes, and he's a true vertical receiver, right? And he's the highest rated of all, even though the surgery. You can look up Lisfranc surgery, and it's not that Lisfranc is impossible to come back from, but it's dicey. It's dicey because it's in a very odd part of the foot, and it's interesting how that injury happens. And
I actually watched him closely. I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I just want to say I watched him very closely after that injury, in the games after that when he did play, and even in the playoff game, he wasn't nearly what he normally is. But I think if he can get back to normal, or at least as good as he can get, I do think he would be a very, very, very attractive receiver in this draft.
And, I want to do something here, which Dr. Moo often does. I'm going to look up live, Lisfranc surgery recovery time. And I really, this is the healing process after Lisfranc is a lengthy one. To start, for a period of 6 to 8 weeks, one has to wear a cast boot and not put any weight at all. So total immobilization for 8 weeks right off the bat. All right. So that means that you're in a absolute lockdown situation. That is followed by several more weeks of limited weight bearing with the use of a walking boot. So now you're probably up into the 12-week period, 3 months, all right? If he had the surgery in January, you're already running through February, March, and into April, all right? By the time you switch to shoes, arch support insoles are needed for support. Sometimes another surgical option that is pursued from the get-go, but more often it is pursued after the fixation method has failed. And that's the thing. I mean, they're actually putting in screws in there, and it's a problem. They may end up actually removing cartilage and fusing or welding the bones together, and that would be a really bad circumstance. The downside of Lisfranc surgery is that it can limit one's range of motion. But sadly, it involves a similar lengthy recovery period. And so that's the fusion if they have to actually fuse the bones together, which they're not going to try to do with Marquise Brown because obviously he's a professional athlete. But, you're looking at an odd part of the foot. It's the mid part of the foot, and it's right by the cuboid, if you're at all medically inclined. And it's a very odd injury that generally happens when your toe is pointing to the ground, toe first into the ground, and you get driven down. And that when your foot is driven down into hard turf, when your foot is pointing down that way, that's how the dreaded Lisfranc injury, it's referred to as the dreaded Lisfranc injury, occurs. And so this is not a good injury by any stretch of the imagination. So the thing is how painful it is. That's why he was playing with it. You can kind of get by, but it can't heal itself because of its location. You have to have surgery. So
how far do you think he's going to drop?
You know, it's my feeling is there's no reason to believe in today's medical system where they have really top line surgeons working with these guys, that assuming that he's back in regular shoes by the time the end of April hits, and then he's going to be able to slowly start strengthening that foot, there's no reason to believe that he would be unable to play. But, you know, again, if he were going to be a top 10 pick, I could see him going down to between 10 and 20. Okay. Maybe a 10 spot. You know what I mean?
You're saying first round?
No, he's gonna go in the first round.
I'm thinking he's gonna go late first round. I can see him slipping to second. I really can.
Every major player, and you know, the other guy is DK Metcalf out of Mississippi,
yeah,
and he's coming off a terrible neck injury.
Ole Miss.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf is Ole Miss.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Mississippi State?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Or well, you said Mississippi. Yeah.
Ole
Whatever.
Miss. Yeah.
I'm just looking at it right now. Yeah. You're fine.
And, you know, he's the big guy who has really, again, great verticality, but coming off a horrible neck injury. The neck injury is going to drop DK Metcalf more than it would drop than the Lisfranc. The surgery will drop Marquise Brown. All right. But again, if you're looking, and again, looking at NFL.com, you're looking at the top 50, those are the top 2 rated wide receivers. And you got to keep going down the list, man, and keep going down the list and keep going down the list until you hit Riley Ridley at 29, okay? And he doesn't have top-end speed, Ridley. So I can't see the Browns jumping on a wide receiver unless, here's a scenario that I would see as possible. If they got the man they want in the first round and they're in this looking at the second round possibilities, and there is still a Marquise Brown or a DK Metcalf on the board that they can grab and jump into back into the end of the first round, then I could see the wide receiver with the Browns trading up from second round and giving up more lower draft picks, okay?
Did you watch the guy I said to watch, that Nikhil Harry from Arizona State?
I have not
6'4",
watched him play.
213.
Have not watched him.
I watched him because I was doing nothing for a while, so I was bored. So I started looking up some of these wide receiver prospects. I sent you an email. You must not have got it. But, yeah, one of the guys that I really didn't know much about, but I went back and watched some film. Nikhil Harry from Arizona State. I think he's similar to Hakeem Butler to me. I mean, he's 6'4", Hakeem's 6'6". I think they're similar. They're not the same, but they kind of have that similar kind of style. So he's a guy who I could see possibly a second round talent. So we'll see, but.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Walter Football right now to find your guy. There's Nikhil Harry. He's rated there at Walter as number 9. You know, he's not an explosive guy. And one of the things that we know about the Browns is with an air raid offense, man, they hired Monken, and they're going to have the guys who are capable of running 4 verts. That's obvious at this point. And a slower defender, wide receiver, is not going to play into that. I mean, I could see the Browns going for sheer speed and in the second round and grabbing a wide receiver, and one of these guys is going to drop. But those two main receivers, and I'm going to say that I could easily see Metcalf dropping out of the first round completely because of the neck injury, but not Marquise Brown. I don't see that. They're also really pimping A.J. Brown from Ole Miss, and he's another guy with a 4.5 projected 40 time, and come combine, he could be in the 4.4 range. But he's more of a West Coast offense guy, right? He's a catch the ball short, get yards after the catch guy, as opposed to a four verts guy. So, I don't. And he's rated on Walter as the number one wide receiver.
This is why it's so risky drafting these wide receivers and DBs high, because you can find guys that are real fast in later rounds.
Yeah, I mean,
they got Paris Campbell really highly rated too. I can't believe they got him rated third over Marquise Brown. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it does.
Even as a Buckeye fan.
But you see, both of them run 4.35s, projected 40s, and they're both burners. And the league, this whole air raid kind of thing, is the next wave that's coming over the NFL. And the ability, if you can find somebody that fast who has the ability to run decent routes, and you have a quarterback who understands the offense that he's in and can communicate that with the wide receiver, you just can't buy speed. You can't turn a slow guy into a faster guy. The Browns are going to wind up with somebody who is a fast wide receiver. They already have this remarkable possession receiver in Jarvis Landry. Let's let him do the voodoo that he do so well. And and I don't believe that when all is said and done, that both Rashad Perryman and Antonio Callaway are going to be both on the roster. I have a feeling that Rashad Perryman might go someplace else.
I think that's a mistake.
What?
I think he was, for us, I know you're not high on him. But
oh, no, I'm not saying that I want that to happen.
I thought you weren't very high on him. Well, I just think he's a guy for Baker that he's not the number one guy by any means. He's not the number one guy, but I'm saying another guy for Baker that he can rely on just for, second tier, third tier wide receiver to count on. I think he would fall under that category. I mean, you've seen him making some bigger plays.
Well, here's the thing. Rashad Perryman has a history of the dropsies. And he did in college, and he did as a pro. And we didn't see that in Cleveland. And that may be one of those yet comments. We haven't seen it yet. The Antonio Callaway thing was just green. I don't think that he even understood the plays that Haley was calling, and he wasn't on the same page as anybody. I mean, he looked like he was running wrong routes to balls. He looked like he was just out of sync with the whole thing. And when Baker came in, he started to pick it up. But we know that he had very little practical experience going in. Callaway is looked upon, I think, with more regard by the Browns brass than Rashad Perryman. And the thing is, and what I'm suggesting is not that the Browns would just dump out on him, but that Perryman himself, as a free agent, may choose to go someplace else. I don't know that, but if the Browns are concerned about Greg Robinson and only willing to give him a one-year deal, Rashad Perryman is going to take the best deal he can get. And I don't see the Browns giving him a multi-year deal just predicated on the limited sampling with the guy's past. I've never seen a guy with drop problems suddenly develop good hands. Never seen this happen in my life.
I think it's Baker just making him look better than what he is.
Well, and there you go. This is LeBron James disease. And, how many times can we say that, LeBron made this guy or that guy appear so much better than he really was? And I think there is truth to that. So, and if the Browns really have their eyes set on another vertical receiver who has, better hands, a history of fewer drops, they can afford to let Rashad Perryman walk.
Especially if you take a guy in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely believable. And I can look at so many different sites. This site, which is the Draft Network, has Metcalf 1, Harmon 2, Ridley 3, Nikhil Harry 4, DeMarcus Lodge 5, AJ Brown 6, Deebo Samuel 7. We haven't even gotten to Marquise Brown, and I still haven't,
Or Hakeem Butler.
And he only makes the honorable mentions are Hakeem Butler.
What?
Yeah, honorable mentions and Marquise Brown. So I mean, it's really great. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the fact of the matter is that everybody sees this shit differently, and that's why the combine tends to consolidate thought processes. But
the 40 is one thing, but the interviews are everything, especially with wide receiver, because a lot of these guys are so gifted, they've just cruised, and now it's big boy time. Like, they gotta love football.
Well, I mean, the challenge.
It's like with Callaway. I don't mean to keep interrupting, but with Callaway, like you're talking about with the whole interview process, it's a matter of, are you going to be devoted to this? I mean, you've seen him get in trouble early on. I forget what exactly it was, but especially like in the draft, if you're going to take a guy, we won't say was 17, but if you're thinking second round, you're going to want a guy who you know for a fact that you're going to be able to have confidence in and not going to have to worry about, drops or attitude or whatever.
No. This is pretty much what I had for you today on the program. I mean, we're going to kind of cut out early because honestly, we have a smaller panel today, and usually more time would be filled up by people's comments on the panel. And
it's just me and Philip today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it comes and goes. I mean, Hammer, I know he was someplace at a sporting event. I don't know if you're aware, but Jim Hammer officiates in
really?
In high school sports. He's a referee. He's a referee. Yeah. So it was probably at one of his events, and he jumped in, and I appreciate it because Jim's been with us for a while. Obviously, I'm not ready yet to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I will over the course of the next several shows.
Did you see Steven's comment
regarding
the Cavs?
No.
He said the Cavs are winning it all this year.
Yeah, right. The Cavs. What I can tell you about the Cavs is that all this roster turnover, and they at least have players now who look like, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're any good, really. But Brandon Knight, at least coming off an injury, but he is an NBA player, and it's able to move Colin Sexton off the point some, which is good because he's able to do more as a scoring guard than he can as a point guard. Having Dellavedova coming off the bench as a point has really helped the team. I love Delly. Everyone in Cleveland loves Delly. He's just an overachiever. It's nice to see Delly proving that he wasn't just a LeBron mirage. I think that's good. And, we got Marquise Chris coming off the bench. I'm not saying that he's the world's smartest basketball player. God only knows he's not, but he does have athleticism. And Ante Zizic is getting a chance to play with the first unit and being fed down low and is playing good basketball. I mean, he actually in the last game, held his ground against Valanciunas pretty damn well. And I'm not going to tell you that the Grizzlies are worth a shit right now, but again, and it's just like the Suns are not worth shit, and Cleveland's had a couple of games here where they've played lesser competition, if you can believe that. But it's nice to see Zizic getting the ball in the right spots on the floor for him, and he is contributing. So all of those things point, now if we can only get, Larry Nance Jr. to understand that he's coming off the bench, it might help the organization a little bit, because I don't think that Larry Nance Jr. is very thrilled about coming off the bench for a team that's this bad.
Speaking of basketball, before we go, did you see the Zion Williamson where he made a crossover and did you hear the story behind that?
Well, the fact that the shoe tore out?
No. I heard this. I forget where I heard it. But they were talking, when you in the NBA, when you have your own shoe and you're signed on with, Nike or Under Armour or whatever, 9 times out of 10, you don't wear the same shoe for every game. You rotate,
Right.
They were saying that Zion wore these shoes. Correct me if I'm wrong, or what? Well, somebody in the chat might, but they were saying that Zion wore these shoes for like several games in a row, and just the beast that he is, just all the wear and tear on him. When he made that cut, he cut so hard his whole freaking foot came right out of the shoe.
Well,
part of that was his fault.
To say it's his fault, I mean, you're telling me that a shoe that's on the foot of the #1 professional prospect in college basketball can't be worn several times without tearing out from the sole? I mean,
I'm just my point. I don't mean it's his fault it's his fault that the shoe ripped. I'm just saying it's his fault in the fact that all these different players like to rotate shoes, and I mean, when you're such a beast like he is, I mean, this dude's a monster. I've watched him a lot. This dude is a physical beast. And, I mean, me and you walking down the street, we're not going to blow out a shoe in 2 days. But, for him playing game after game after game, and then you take one of those hard cuts like that, there it goes.
Well, I don't know how many times he wore the shoe, but believe me, he may be a beast. But I've watched the biggest beast in the world, LeBron James, never blow out a shoe in his life. And the things that he did were just amazing. And one comment about LeBron before we get out of here, he's questioning now whether his teammates in Los Angeles have what it takes to get into the postseason. We've seen this tactic from LeBron before, but I think there comes a point where the 34-year-old LeBron James isn't going to be able to will a young generation of people who don't match his work ethic into the playoffs. And right now, they're 3.5 games behind. There's still 23 to go, but you're looking at a situation where time is dwindling. LeBron came back from an injury, but they're really not playing astounding basketball since he came back. And there hasn't been the progress made that you would have thought would have been made by this time in the season.
Do you think he's mad that they didn't trade for AD?
Well, I don't think that there was really an opportunity. The Pelicans just sat him, arrested him, and said, enough of this shit. And I think they shut it all down. But honestly, I think that what LeBron James is frustrated with is that his injuries last longer now. He's not the kid that he used to be, and he needs help. And it's one thing to be the big fish in the small pond in Cleveland, but he is in the biggest lake of all. He's in the ocean in Los Angeles. And this is a much more difficult situation for a different reason. And you add age to that equation. And, and then you're looking at players who just are refusing to play defense there. And to be honest with you, adding Rajon Rondo to the mix is not helpful, because he is a notorious coach's nightmare. And, you're looking at Luke Walton, and he's going to be the guy who loses his job because of this, just like Mike Brown did. And just like now David Blatt lost his, it's going to be another in a long succession of head coaches who lose their jobs surrounding LeBron James. And
before we go,
yep.
As far as the Lakers head coaching job, now I want to preface this by saying I don't believe this is going to happen, but I would not be surprised. Do you think that there is any chance that LaVar Ball is the next Lakers head coach?
No, absolutely not.
I've heard ridiculous. I've heard that thrown around a lot.
Yeah, stupid. I mean, for me, the problem with the Lakers is that you have certain guys who are replicated. To me, Jordan Clarkson is not a playoff basketball player any more than Hart is. They're replications of one another. They're guys who can come off the bench and score, but they don't play a lick of defense. And you just have to be able to get, if you have explosion, you got to get stops. And, if you look at the history of the Cavaliers' success when LeBron was with the team, it wasn't that the team played 48 minutes of defense. That's bullshit. But they would play 4-minute stretches where they would play lockdown defense, and with the ability that they had with LeBron and the ability to feed people off the ball, it was, in that 4-minute span, the Cavaliers would get a double-digit lead. You look at the Cavaliers now, and you look at the last game against the Grizzlies. I mean, they roar out to a 17-point lead, and the next thing you know, man, Memphis is ahead by 2 because first of all, it's Clank City for a lot of these guys. They're hot and cold. I mean, if you
when they're young,
well,
and that frustrates LeBron.
It isn't just that; it's the Jamal Crawford syndrome. I mean, he can jack the ball up and he can score a lot of points, but at the end of the day, he's a 42% shooter from the field, and it will work its way out mathematically. If he hits 5 shots in a row like Jordan Clarkson will, well, that means he's going to probably miss 7 in a row at another point in the game. And those droughts accompanying lousy defense, you can build up a lead and just blow it out just as quick. The Lakers, without Lonzo Ball, are playing no defense whatsoever at the guard position. And even though, Lonzo Ball doesn't help that much from shooting the ball, he is a much better defensive player for the Lakers than what is, they've got on the floor now. So those are the problems.
What big stars do you see going to LA?
I'm sorry, Philip?
What big stars would you see going to LA to join LeBron?
Oh, my goodness. I haven't even looked at that. But, it's always something you don't come seeing and, you don't see coming. And that's it. The NBA will orchestrate what it needs to orchestrate. The interesting thing is, I think the Lakers will make the final position, but they're going to have to beat the Spurs to get there. They're 3.5 behind. And they can't afford games like they just came off of, losing to the Pelicans without AD. I mean, the Pelicans are a team that are 8 games under 500 and heading in the wrong direction, and they blew out the Lakers. You can't have shit like that happen. You got to win the games you're expected to win, and that's not happening yet for this Lakers team. But we've also seen the ability of them to get hot and win like 6-7 games in a row. So I do think the Lakers will make the playoffs. But they lack.
Get nowhere.
Yeah, they lack the necessities when it comes to defensive skills.
At least they made it, though. Look at us. Good Lord.
Well, I mean, look at Jordan Clarkson when he tried to play in the playoffs. It was god-awful, embarrassing. And that's what you're going to see with the Lakers, are a bunch of guys who are regular season 82-game guys who they have no idea what it means to be in the playoffs. They have no idea what the work ethic is necessary to keep getting back there. They've never experienced the harder defense that the referees allow, the holding and hand contact and that they allow. They're not going to be able to get free as easily. I think Laker fans are in for a rude awakening in the first round. I got to get going, guys.
Good talking to you.
It was good talking to you, too. And thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition. That's all, folks, of this edition of Boohead Radio. Yeah. Parlez-vous français? We'll be back again on Friday with yet the next edition. And, hey, check out the archive. It will be time-stamped. Until Friday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.